All right, welcome in. It is 49ers happy hour on a Friday. The 49ers might be adding another player, and I've got some details for you here. Another Brock. I talked about Brock squared before. Brock Wright, the Detroit Lions tight end. And I don't know if he's technically the 49ers tight end now or still the Lions tight end. Restricted free agent. 49ers have an agreement with him. He signed an offer sheet from the 49ers, but the Lions do have 5 days to match. We have learned that the size of the offer sheet for Brock Wright is 3 years, $12 million. It just so happens that Charlie Woerner, the 49ers former tight end too, signed with the Atlanta Falcons for exactly the same parameters. 3 years, $12 million. Woerner's deal is worth only about 4.1, 4.2 million fully guaranteed. I'm guessing that Brock Wright's offer from the 49ers is similar. The Detroit Lions have 5 days to match that offer, or Brock Wright becomes a 49er. But that is tight end 2 money. Brock Wright played for Notre Dame, where he was an H-back fullback type. So we know that he can also block and maybe even be an understudy or a backup to Kyle Juszczyk. And on top of that, take a look at this. I just put together an entire thread on Twitter that details what exactly the 49ers might be getting from Brock Wright as far as a receiving upgrade goes. But Charlie Woerner, through 4 seasons with the 49ers, caught 11 passes for 120 yards and didn't score a touchdown. Brock Wright, 43 catches, 424 yards, and 7 touchdowns in 3 seasons with the Detroit Lions. The 49ers saw a total of 4 catches for 45 yards from tight ends not named George Kittle last season. So the 43 for 424 and 7 TDs over 3 seasons from Brock Wright would mark a notable upgrade at tight end too. We know that Kyle Shanahan has long been looking for a tight end too that can catch to supplement what George Kittle has been doing. The best example would be 2020 when the 49ers signed Jordan Reed. Unfortunately, that was an injury flyer, and the injury flyer aspect of things did end up coming to fruition as Jordan Reed got hurt earlier in the season. So the 49ers, I think, with 3 years, $12 million for Brock Wright, they let Charlie Woerner walk at that rate to the Atlanta Falcons. But again, Woerner only caught 11 passes for 120 yards in 4 seasons. In 3 seasons, you have over 4 times the receiving production from Brock Wright. So this guy right here, I think the 49ers say, okay, we found a bargain. Also, this won't count against the compensatory formula. So Woerner leaving helps the 49ers in the compensatory formula. Wright potentially coming at the same price, but for more receiving production doesn't hurt them in the compensatory formula as far as 2025 comp draft picks. This, to me, this is kind of draft ninja move for the 49ers. This is something where they're playing chess while the rest of the league is playing checkers if this ends up working. Detroit offered Brandon Wright $2.985 million on the right of first refusal RFA tender. That means that 4 years and $12 million and over $4 million guaranteed. That means they're unlikely to match this. They were unlikely to offer more. Now, maybe they will. Maybe they'll think twice about it because they'll say, oh, quality organization like the 49ers wants this guy at a higher price. Maybe we should up our offer. But like I said earlier, at the very least, the 49ers will be causing the Detroit Lions, who are an NFC rival at this point. They played them tough in the NFC Championship game. They're going to be causing those Detroit Lions to spend some more money than they otherwise would have. At best for the 49ers, the Lions don't match him, and they have their tight end too at around the same rate that Charlie Woerner signed with Atlanta for, but a better tight end too. Somebody who I think is more suited to potentially even be Kyle Juszczyk's backup, but somebody who's been more productive in the receiving game. And they have him without counting against the compensatory formula, which is a big deal. The 49ers have 5 comp draft picks this year. They've maxed out the formula again, which is the top number in the NFL. So this is an example of chess, not checkers. Why else might they like Brock Wright? Well, look at this. The number one at the top, the number 1 tight end in the NFL last season in yards after the catch per reception was George Kittle, unsurprisingly. He averaged 7.3 yards after the catch per reception last season. Brock Wright, over his career has averaged 7.1 yards after the catch per reception. 313 yak yards over his 43 catches in the NFL over 3 seasons. That's good. So, as I wrote here, between the blocking, the plus yak ability, 7.1 would have ranked second in the NFL last season behind only Kittle in tight ends. And the moderate, at least the moderate receiving upgrade for tight end too. It's easy to see why the 49ers like Brock Wright beyond the fact that he has a good first name. His name is Brock, so they could add him to that mix. So I could show you exactly where Brock Wright would fit. We could even put him into the roster right now because we can highlight him as a restricted free agent. So here's a look at that 49ers roster. I project currently 53 spots taken on the 53 man, but we're going to have to kick somebody out because obviously if this comes to fruition, Brock Wright's going to make the team. As you can see here, only 2 tight ends on the 53 man projection as we speak. So obviously there's going to be another one. I would put Brock Wright in as tight end 2 so we can move Braden Willis down a peg. And we could put Brock Wright in right here as the 49ers tight end 2. Now, what we're going to do, just like we did for Jawan Jennings, we're going to highlight him in yellow. And I spelled his name wrong. We got it right. We're going to highlight him in yellow because that means he's a restricted free agent. I now have 54 players on the 49ers 53-man roster, but since Dre Greenlaw is likely headed to PUP, according to John Lynch, that would be 53. Now, they usually like to carry 4 tight ends. So they might draft one, and that player that they draft might be the competition for Cam Latu. Right now, I have 3 tight ends on that roster. The reason for that is that I have more offensive linemen. I've got 9 offensive linemen. They've typically only carried 8. But it's not a tweak that I feel that I need to be making right now. So that's where Brock Wright fits in, tight end 2. We'll find out in 5 days whether or not Detroit has matched the 49ers offer sheet that Brock Wright has signed. So he is set to become a 49er. 3 years, $12 million, and better receiving production than Charlie Woerner in his career. So 49ers Q&A time. Happy hour. Cheers. I call this drink the Elderflower Thistle. As you can see, orange rind in it. Of course, big circular ice cube, which is very important. But we've got gin. We've got elderflower liqueur, St. Germain elderflower liqueur. We got aromatic bitters, and we've got the orange rind. And obviously, the slower melt of the ice cube is really important. So it's happy hour. I know it's happy hour wherever you might be in the U.S. You could be bordering on evening time if you're on the East Coast, 7:26 on the East Coast. Really good. We're going to be in Napa next week, by the way, or Napa, Healdsburg. Going to be good. I'm ready for your questions. Let's go. Let's talk about Brock Wright. Cocktail time. Yes. Cheers. Circular ice cube. Nice. Yes. Yes, indeed. I don't think anybody has any questions about this guy. So that's great. We can just sit here and talk. David, do you see the 49ers giving Brock a Mahomes-esque 10-year contract? I think that contract ended up being good for the Chiefs because right now Mahomes not even in the top 5 of QB spend. Mahomes is at $45 million a year. There are already 4 guys over $50 million a year. So it ended up being a good long-term investment for Kansas City. If Brock Purdy delivers the same way that he did this past year, you could think about something that long. I still think it's a sample size issue for Brock Purdy. You still want him to show the durability. You still want him to put a full season on tape. I think Mahomes, he was a rookie in 2017, played behind Alex Smith, took over the starting job in 18, lost in the NFC Championship game, and then in 19, Patrick Mahomes won the Super Bowl. Did I say NFC Championship? It was AFC Championship. He lost to Brady. So Mahomes, after year 3, was eligible, and they were sure because he had won a Super Bowl at that point. I think, a lot of what happens with Purdy's contract as far as the actual monetary amounts and the fine print and the length, a lot of that might be determined by whether or not the 49ers win the Super Bowl next year. So why don't we just revisit this at that time? Maybe they'll use the two tight ends at once. Yeah, I mean, I think you would do that if they can both be credible receiving threats. They have in blocking formations, but I think in the pass game, that's potentially really exciting if they can do that. Thank you, James. I appreciate you. Does Brock Wright offer come as the result of Latu's performance last season so far? Not necessarily. I mean, obviously Latu dropped a lot of passes in training camp, and then he had to have the knee surgery, and he didn't play last year. But Brock Wright's performance or offer here comes mainly because Kyle Shanahan has always wanted a tight end that can counterbalance George Kittle and bring a receiving threat to the field. Again, the 49ers had a grand total of 4 catches for 45 yards out of tight ends not named George Kittle last year. I think you could count on one hand the amount of catches they've had from tight ends not named George Kittle over the past 3 seasons. Charlie Woerner only had 11 catches over 4 seasons. They've wanted this counterbalance really bad. That's why they went out and they didn't re-sign Charlie Woerner, but they're trying to get Brock Wright for the same price that Woerner left to Atlanta. So that's the driving force. Now, of course, they used 2 draft picks on tight ends last draft because they wanted to see if they could find that on a draft cost controlled basis. But Cam Latu was dropping a whole lot of passes. So that doesn't really jive really well with your need for and your desire for a good receiver opposite George Kittle. And I think Braden Willis moderately impressed them, but he was a 6th round pick, and they need more than 2 tight ends. So Willis can slot in as tight end 3, tight end 4. We'll see what else the 49ers do. It is not a great draft class for tight ends. Last year was much better. That's why the 49ers double dipped. So this class is not as good at that position, so it makes a whole lot more sense to go after a restricted free agent. Now we'll still see if the Lions match the offer or not. If the 53 man is basically full, what do you think that means for the draft? Guaranteed trade up? Not necessarily guaranteed trade up, but I think it's definitely trending that way. And this is the 53 that you're referring to. I do think it is very crowded. I do think the 49ers are in good position to consolidate assets, move up in the draft to address this right here, this offensive line. I mean, yes, I think you would most rather have an upgrade at right tackle. I think you're in a good spot at right guard with Feliciano and potentially Burford mixing in. I think that center, you could look for a longer-term upgrade at that position. And I think you have to recognize the fact that Aaron Banks is entering the final season of his rookie contract. You have to recognize the fact that Trent Williams is going to be 36 years old. You have to recognize the fact that I can't remember a single Super Bowl winner, especially in this modern era, with the edge rushers and the defensive tackles as athletic as they are. I can't remember a single Super Bowl winner that's been able to get it done with 5 or 6 offensive linemen. I think you need 7 or 8 quality bodies to make it through these marathon NFL seasons. So Jalen Moore, final season under contract. Ben Barch, only 1 year under contract. 2 more years for Kittle and Burford. You've got to think about the future at the offensive line, and I think this draft might be the spot to do that for the 49ers, and maybe a trade up for a tackle or somebody who could potentially play center in the future, maybe guard right now, could be a good move for the 49ers. The 49ers use Debo as a wide receiver and running back hybrid, but it would also be good to have a receiving running back to complement McCaffrey. I think the 49ers have been striving for that with all their moves. They want somebody who can catch the ball out of the backfield. This is even before Christian McCaffrey was part of the San Francisco 49ers. I mean, Kyle Shanahan has always underlined adaptability as something that he's looked for. So if that's the case, if adaptability is such a big deal, then that's a trait that the 49ers have sought. I think that they've drafted running backs higher up. We talk about those 3rd rounders because they believe that there's a better chance you're going to get that kind of adaptability. Although I do think that there was a whole other caveat that the 49ers were looking for with their running backs over the past couple of years when they drafted Trey Sermon and when they drafted Ty Davis Price, and that was size. I think that they really wanted bulkier running backs, more of the power mold, and that was because they were trying to pair running backs with Trey Lance for the read option. The running back was going to get the gut runs, right? They were going to get the runs up the middle. Lance was going to keep some of the runs on the read options to the outside. That was the plan. Obviously, Lance ended up not being as fast as the 49ers thought he'd be. Obviously, that ended up not working out. Obviously, Brock Purdy's the quarterback now. I think they're going to go back to their more standard outside zone prototype. Somebody like Elijah Mitchell that they picked in the 6th round in 2021, they didn't reach up high to draft him. They relied on what the R&D department recommended in 2021, and that was, this guy's a really good outside zone runner for the Ragin' Cajuns, the Louisiana Ragin' Cajuns, for Elijah Mitchell. That was, I mean, he came out of a smaller school. He hit the crease on the outside extremely explosively, and he fit, right? Elijah Mitchell's been a tremendous fit for this team as far as his outside zone running ability goes. And I think they even discovered something greater about him as time went on. They said they call him Drano. The nickname for Elijah Mitchell is Drano because he finds the hole so effectively. So he can run the inside zone too. He can run the gap scheme stuff too. He can run. They love the way that Elijah Mitchell has acclimated to this scheme, and I think they can find a running back that fits in that kind of way moving forward. All right, guys, it's time for me to go. It's pizza night here. So I have all the pizza and the grill ready to go. I've got the dough ready to go, and I think people are coming over. So cheers to everybody. It is happy hour on a Friday. Hopefully you enjoyed the show. We'll talk to you very soon.